Awesome. Hey, everybody. So, super excited to welcome you all to this executive panel session from SciCode, a CISO's AppSec blueprint for 2025. I'm Amir Kazemi, Director of Product Marketing, and super excited to be the host for the panel session today. So, for those of you who are new to SciCode and our webinar series, welcome. We host a monthly series where we tackle really big questions that are top of mind for the AppSec industry as a whole. And for those of you joining us again, we're glad to have you back. As we close out the year, this discussion comes at a really critical point in time as organizations have several things that are top of mind for them. One of them is the expanding attack surfaces. The other thing is the greater complexity of AI-driven threats. And all of this is really impacting our ability to deliver safe code faster. So we'll kind of touch on those topics with the panel today. In addition, the panel also comes at a great time as this week we've just launched our second annual State of ASPM report, where we surveyed over 700 CISOs and AppSec leaders on the challenges that they're facing across their enterprise applications. So the report is packed full of insights, and we really would love for you to kind of dive into the report. So if you want to get your hands on it, go ahead and head over to psycho.com, and there you can download the full report. We'll touch on a few topics around the report as well, which is going to be super interesting in today's discussion. Um, I'm delighted to welcome our executive speakers here today. So to get into the nitty gritty of the biggest challenges we've experienced in 2024, and a look forward on some of the future strategies in 2025 as well. So with that, welcome Daniel, Jimmy, James. Unfortunately, Narendra couldn't join us today due to some urgent matters, but we'll welcome him another time in 2025. Let's go ahead and do a quick round of intros if you don't mind. Why don't we start with you, James?
Hello, I'm James. I'm a security engineer, recently turned analyst. I'm just happy to be included with executive insights. I had to start my own business to become an executive, but I guess I do qualify now. Yeah, my background is mostly on the engineering side. So I am, from a CISO's perspective, I'm the annoying guy begging you for budget for the cool thing that I really want to get. So yeah, that's a lot of I have a background in application, cloud security in small, large businesses, big compliance requirements, small ones. So just a lot of diverse DevOpsy security engineer experience. So thanks.
Awesome. Pleasure to have you, James. Thank you. Daniel, why don't you go next?
Yeah, thank you for that introduction, James. Yeah, my name is Daniel Herford. I am the Chief Information Security Officer for Intermex Wire Transfer. Happy to be joining the panel today from sunny Miami. So someone made a comment about my shirt. Anyway, when I come to Miami, I let my staff pick out my clothing, and they have bought me several shirts just like this. So please don't let it be off-putting. I apologize if it's too loud. From a CISO perspective, we have a pretty large development group here, and that is something that is not, James, to your point, that is not my strongest technical background. I'm more of an infrastructure and data protection person in terms of my 20 plus years of experience, but I have had to ramp up quickly in the last 2 years to help with Intermex's journey from an ASPM perspective. So happy to be sharing any thoughts. And James, by the way, I love it when engineers get excited about geeky security things. I wish more did. So don't feel guilty about that.
Oh, I never did. I was begging for that budget like you wouldn't believe for all the cool shiny stuff. So
Awesome. Thanks, Daniel. Great to have you on board here. And then, of course, last but not least, Jimmy Zhu here from SciCode.
Hey everybody, Jamie here. Excited to be here with James, Daniel. Yeah, field CTO at SciCode, but about 5 months now. But prior to that, about 20 plus years experience of done development, done ops, done DevOps, done security. Been public-private sector, run a consulting practice, been on the solution side, reseller. Done a lot of AppSec, DevSecOps work in the last 8 plus years in CloudSec, APISec. Advise a lot of startups. So obviously excited to be here. Had different perspective right from my previous lives as well as current lives.
Awesome. Thanks, Jimmy. Excited to have you and your experience on board as well. Yeah, so wanted to cover some general, like some general themes here in this kind of panel session. The first one is around kind of adapting to the code boom. and the challenges in 2024. Obviously, AI is a hot topic, right? There was a study done around 93 billion lines of code that were executed just last year, and that's exponentially growing over time because of the impacts of AI. What new risks or vulnerabilities do you think have emerged that weren't a concern in the past because of the new productivity that we get from AI generated code or just AI in general? Maybe we can start with Daniel, if you have any thoughts there.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, the impact of AI, I guess, can't be, you can't have a webinar without talking about it, I suppose. But maybe I'll give a little bit of a unique perspective on this. Um, it's not a new thing that we have more code than we feel like we can secure. And
Yeah,
AI makes it worse, right? Or I say where it makes it better and worse. But
yeah,
it's more of a evolution of where we already were in terms of trying to keep up and trying to sort of break into this domain where security is still to some extent an outlier in some cases. Again, everyone's on their own journey, but I know at least from personal experience and colleagues and other CISOs that I communicate with. So, I mean, again, the impact has definitely been felt, but it almost just again, it just makes it more pertinent, and it really has driven us to really question how we're doing code analysis, how we're looking at security in the CI/CD, because everything we do, we've asked ourselves some questions like more just for thought provoking, but we've gone to our teams and said, if you had to analyze 3 times as much code with no additional people, what does that look like?
mm,
What can we do? What new approaches do we need to be taking into account? And when you say that and you sort of start talking in those terms, it really makes people think. It's like, okay, we can't just do an after the facts analysis. We really have to do more shift left. We've got to get our developers prompted in the IDE directly, for instance, when they're about to do something wrong. We've got it. It makes it gives us something that we can continue to have this same shift left conversation, but maybe it's the next evolution of that conversation. So that's certainly what's happened from our perspective, and it's something we talk about quite a bit.
yeah, I love that. James, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with everything you've said, Daniel. And I typically say, like, it's just the velocity of code, like the amount of code has increased. It's not like there's new vulnerabilities that have happened. Like, it's the same vulnerabilities, but faster. But the thing, now that I've like used AI for even more of my like side projects and stuff for doing code generation, I think a lot of application security issues happen because you're not following standard practices. So just the simple examples like password hashing, you should just use Argon 2 ID and like you're fine basically. But people get in the trouble when they've got the developer that's like, I'm going to invent my own hashing algorithm, and then it like has some issue. And it, like when you try to make custom ways to do all of this stuff is typically where you run into issues. And what I've seen with just my own use of Gen AI is like that's definitely, it makes it more possible that someone would think like, oh, I need to hash this, and just put the chat GPT like, create a hashing algorithm to do this. And then you've sort of got your own like hacky implementation of a thing rather than using like the best practices that are well established that you should be using for a framework. And so I do think it's actually like a little bit more of a risk in the sense of people just not, it empowers people like me who I'm not an expert on like JavaScript, and I can implement my own like weird hacky JavaScript thing in a way that before I would have been like skill ceilinged out of like trying to do it. And like even a Google search would have actually led me in a more secure direction to say like, oh, here's this library you should use, instead of the chatbot telling me exactly how to do the thing I asked it, and doing something insecure as a result. And so I think it actually does increase the possibilities for like people implementing their own hacky versions of stuff, which is just how a lot of AppSec vulnerabilities happen in the first place.
Yeah, yeah, you're definitely more prone to that. Jimmy?
I swear we didn't talk before this, but I gotta say, Daniel James, spot on, right? Same. I would say that's what comes to mind is people think about, hey, what is new attack surface, or what's new risk, what's new vulnerability? Forget about that. Yeah, but I think it's nothing new. in a sense that we talked about the same kind of thing. Then we talked about it, James talked about it, but I think it's the scale, it's the testament of broken process, right? AppSec has been in for a long time, and it's been almost 10 years since we talked about DevSecOps. A lot of the processes, this practice, been implemented early on. We can, don't want to get into the can worm of shift left incorrectly, right? There's a big discussion on James. We're seeing that, but AI is probably the reason why it's retest, break the process that was not meant for scale, right? If you're just going to do the same approach, then AI multiplies, right? And the one thing that I think there's two evolution in the last 10 years that really test the process of developer security, whether it can, whether you can actually test that to scale. One is the shift from, to cloud native, right? Developer has a lot of responsibilities. The next is AI. And I remember early days of DevSecOps, not even mature customers, organizations wants to shoot for the shiny object of chaos engineering. You're not even ready for the basics. Well, I think the AI is a way to, hey, you got what you wished for. Chaos engineering is here without you wanting to be here. So let's see if your process, your practices, your tools, everything else, can you live up to the test on the same thing. So that's what I think is the basic, is the AI just multiply or amplify the issue that you haven't thought about. So that's kind of what I thought. It's now is any time. Now is a perfect time to actually go back to see, hey, what the foundational things that we need to focus on. Things like Jamie said. Hey, don't try to reinvent existing encryption algorithm. And to Daniel's point, like focus on the basics.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think all of you made some great points here. Like, are your processes up for scale? Daniel, you and both James talked a little bit about shift left. On that note, like, has the explosion of AI affected, security teams' workflows in that sense? As you're shifting left, right? Is there any impact to just workflows, not only with security teams, but also with the developers as well? Like, how has that shifted?
I'll speak, and I think James said it, so he may have more examples, but he's 100% right. It, Jimmy, I really agree on the workflow side. Again, everything accelerates, as the velocity accelerates, right? I'm a motorcyclist. I've been riding my whole life, and it's very common knowledge that if you're going to make a mistake on a corner, the faster you're going, it's an exponential increase in terms of your likelihood to run off the corner, right? So if you're going 20 miles an hour, it's one thing. If you're doing 80, you're going to come up to that wall really quick. You're really going to notice it, right? 100% agree on as the velocity of the code has increased, it just shows, like you said, the existing gaps in what our workflow is. I'll be honest, Amir, I'm just being candid. You're asking how has it changed, and I
Yeah.
honestly think this year was a year to say, oh, we really need to change it. I don't know that we've arrived there. I'm just being honest with us.
Sure.
But we recognize the question, right? Which is like, okay, some of these workflows may not make any sense. These processes don't make any sense anymore, or security now is going to slow it down if we continue our current workflow versus needing to catch up. Some of that is tools, right? Because some tools don't work in the AI world that worked in the non-AI world. But a lot of it is workflow and processes. So again, for us, the only thing I will say is it has accelerated our desire to put more interactive um, IDE based prompts in terms of like live code, live warnings, live gates. Don't do this. You can't do this. This does not meet our standard. Whereas before we almost felt like our workflows could do an after the fact scan or sort of a near term scan. And now we're just saying, okay, no, we've got to shift to like real time or near real time implementation of these standards. That's really the biggest, probably for us. That's the biggest conversation we're having in terms of changing
Yeah.
that workflow.
Yeah, Daniel, thanks for the candid answer there. I think a lot of the listeners here are probably in the same boat. They're wondering, how do we, figure out and reset the thinking or even the processes, the people, the technology around these workflows, right? So I appreciate that answer. Um, Jimmy or James, do you want to take it next for us? James.
Sure. I think a lot of the stuff I'm seeing hasn't yet changed because of AI, like on the workflow side. I think DevSecOps has just been like breaking in general. Because the whole idea of like doing this PR quality gate thing, like this idea just really stuck in our heads that like if we stop the bleeding and then address the backlog, like that's how people have come to interpret shift left from an engineering perspective. And I think just people have learned that that's not really how vulnerabilities work. Like CVEs get discovered over time, and there is no like, oh, but I gated it. It's like, no, now I need to upgrade. Is like really what we're talking about is building scalable patching processes alongside good prioritization methodologies for code and container and OS vulnerabilities. And I think people are starting to think a little more holistically about how do we accomplish all of that. Like definitely the trend that I've heard from people more and more is like turning off the quality gates in PRs because they're just too noisy. Not on, I think SAST is a asterisk on that, but just like from an SCA container vulnerability scanning side, like you have to learn how to live with the fact that there will be CVEs in your environment at all times. And then the question I think has shifted from how do we stop CVEs from being in the environment to how do we determine which ones we actually need to do something about and how do we get that information to the right people to actually fix them. And so I think
Mhm.
that is like the primary workflow shifts that's happened.
Yeah.
And that's AI sort of alongside like the velocity of it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting point. So part of it is like a mindset shift there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Jimmy.
I just remember that was exactly the every sales convo that I went into and that I still have with people who are exploring these tools for the first time. It's very tempting to think, oh, I just need to stop introducing vulnerabilities, then we can fix all the old ones.
Mhm.
But that just really misses how vulnerabilities are discovered over time.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, so good discussion. I think those are good comments. But I think another thing to add here, right? It's empathy for developers. I don't see that, right? I mean, not enough of that. James talked about the devs that got broken. A lot of the enterprise client work with when I still was a consultant early this year, right? It's the two words, two terms came to mind as example of broken workflows, right? One, it's vulnerability fatigue, right? As you trying to, it doesn't matter where you put in your scanning, it does not matter. Yeah, you can't just be in one place. IDE, PR, even production and continuous testing. You aggregate all that, right? You want to shift left, you want to automate all those testing, but then okay, then what? There are dozens, right? Yeah, you can stop the bleeding, but the big problem is the backlog, right? The existing in production. What do you do? That's one, right? Um, people solve the issue of automation, they don't solve the issue of quality. The second thing is processes, right? It's security people are not offending anybody, right? But generally speaking, I think that if you think about the education of a security professional, right, the certs that they take, I think everything that they learn, like even in the area of loan management, are fundamentally against best practice for this spaces, right? So it's great to automate all those testing, all that, but what if you still have manual processes anytime there's a change? There's a new design, new development, a significant change. You still have to follow through a change review board, got to go through a manual questionnaire, even though the scanning is automated, but questionnaire is manual. And you have people who may have a GRC background, who may have not have engineering background, who's just follow antiquated processes. Those are the things that's creating the fatigue, right? That needs to change, regardless of tools.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, on that note, I want to ask a little bit around like, shift left, working with developers, but how are developers adopting secure coding practices today? Like with all these trends, these changes that we're talking about, what are kind of like the best practices that you guys have seen in your experience in terms of me as a developer adopting security as a whole? Like,
Yeah, the more advanced application security teams that I've seen, and I think this is really hard because it does require a sizable like uh, amount of maturity in the team to do it. But creating like custom reusable code blocks, whether it's on the IAC side for like reusable modules that are secure by design, or like hey, anytime you make a new public facing API endpoint, use this decorator for CSRF protection or for whatever use this for, this is how we do encoding, this is how we do sanitization. Like having standard libraries that developers can go to for these common problems. That it requires a lot of very detailed work working with developers over time. And I think this strategically is a great way to say, like, instead of, hey, we've got 10,000, because we tend, security people like me tend to think of this stuff as like alerts, like we've got to get these 10,000 alerts to the developers. But if we instead bucket those into like SQL injection findings, cross-site scripting findings, and then like make a campaign to go fix it, and as part of that we say, here's how we want to fix these findings in general, like use this library, or we built this standard methodology. Like those are the sorts of things that really allow you to like fix things at scale, and teach things to developers in a way that's relevant to them, instead of just saying like, here's a SQL injection finding, and then the tool's got a little paragraph about like SQL injection's bad, and then it's like, okay.
Daniel, do you
Apologies,
want
I'm in my all the offices here in Miami have glass walls, so people walk by and say hi, and I feel compelled to wave at them.
to? That's okay.
James, I agree. Again, just I'll make a point to add. So I mean, I agree with everything that was said there. The question about how do the developers feel is a really interesting one, especially from a CISO perspective. Um, I mean, I feel like they really want to embrace secure code practices, but I also feel that each of them feels like the best expert to determine the way to do that. So, and that's good. That comes from a sentence of that comes from a standpoint of confidence, right? And they feel like they know. And it's hard. It's hard for someone like me to say we really. Again, the lean, James, I'll agree. The lean from someone like me is to say, well, we need to adopt a standard. Like even if it's not the best standard, there's no such thing as the best, and even if it is the best for a moment, it's likely to change, right? But from a standpoint of predictability, establishing that standard and then at least getting the development group to adhere to that, and then of course anything they want to do in addition to that is fantastic. That's a real challenge. It's for me, from my perspective, it's a challenge to get. We have a large development group. It's pretty distributed in that we sort of enable them to do a lot of work. We're not quite as bureaucratic as some organizations where everyone does the exact same thing on the exact same machine and there are companies that are like that. So yeah, I think there's a lot of feeling around there, Amir, that they want to do better, and I believe, regardless of what anyone says, that they do need some guidance. I think it's appropriate for an organization to set a standard and a tone. Even, and again, you got to know your organization. How bureaucratic does it need to be? How fancy? How there's a lot of hows, and a lot of that is subjective. But my opinion is, if you're not setting some foundation, it's all feelings, right? So that's my approach. I have to make that decision from my chair, and that's what I'm trying to do is work with. And I will say, in terms of adhering to those foundational concepts or those standards, whatever you want to call it, I don't get a lot of friction. And I think it's because I include them when we're developing them. I don't just come out of the corner office and send some big edict. It's more like we talk to the leads, we talk to the people we need to, and we try as much as we can to get consensus that these are the standards we're going to abide by. And I think that helps because it sets a foundation, it sets a sort of minimal requirements, and then of course, like James said, I'm all about people going above and beyond, and even suggesting changes as needed. So I think the feelings are good. I think
Yeah.
if you're a CISO, now's the time to talk to people and bring those people into the conversation. I think there's a desire out there to want to transform this. I just think, if someone tells you they want to do something, you need to provide them an answer and you need to engage in that conversation. So that's why I love people like James. If I wish we had more lead engineers like that want to talk about that and want to advance. So that's that's the feeling I'm getting from my perspective.
No, that's great. A question for you, Daniel. Have you guys thought about a more programmatic approach in terms of like security training for the development teams as well?
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
And I don't want to necessarily, I don't know what the rules are here. I don't want to necessarily mention any product names or services, but yes, we are actually looking at very novel, different. I will say that's an area that we're looking at novel approaches, meaning approaches I have not personally seen. So when we started talking about awareness training, I'll be honest, right now we're probably doing Gen 1 awareness training for developers, which is just special topically targeted additional awareness training, right? Everyone gets certain training on policies, procedures, data loss, all that. But developers, we give them special training. That's a little bit more DevSecOps, and that I think that let's call that a Gen 1 approach. I think a lot of people are doing that because they recognize these are special people with special risks, and we need. But what I've been seeing is a lot of motion, really very interesting and fascinating approaches of no, let's do, how about we sort of combine training with your standards, with some gamification, with campaigns, with, much more targeted developer-esque and really targeted at developers in terms of, and again, you can call it awareness training, but it's a lot more than that.
Yeah.
So there are some projects out there and some vendors out there that are doing sort of, secure code, things around, and it's very interesting. We absolutely are planning to invest in that and give it a shot in 2025. It's not something we're doing today. We're doing kind of that Gen 1 approach, but I've seen it, and I'm convinced it is a better approach. So we will have, and I'm willing to share that. I just don't know if it's appropriate to share some of the companies we've talked to there. But again, I'm not endorsing them. I'm just saying that we certainly have done some research in there.
No worries. Like, I mean, I don't want to speak vendors here at all either, but us at SciCode, we're doing, some really cool things with partners like Secure Code Warrior, for example, on
That's the one I was
topics.
going to mention. So obviously
Okay.
that helps me. We did not talk, as Jimmy said. We all didn't trade notes. So that's one of the ones we have found. Not the only one, but that is one of the ones
Yeah.
we have found. They have a very interesting and again, I'm using the word fascinating. When I love it as a CISO when I can go to something and be like, I've literally never heard of this approach before. And it's really novel and interesting. And we want to give it a shot. And we plan to do that. They'll give us a free campaign or two, and I'm all about results. If it shows results, then it's absolutely something we will invest in. I think it's really important, Amir, to answer your first question. Yes, I think that's important, and it's a good time to do that, I think.
Amazing. Thanks, Daniel. Jimmy, did you want to add anything to?
Yeah, good points from both, right? I don't want to, touch both. I think focus on developer, right? I don't think that developer will never, and I don't not mean a negative way, that they will never have enough training to be as good at AppSec to find all the flaws, right? You want to encourage that, encourage behavior. One of the things that when I was running AppSec is from a metric perspective, qualitative metrics is that, I think Daniel touched it. If you do it right, doesn't matter what you do, you have two outcomes. You may have a pen tester running your AppSec program who's very good at finding issues and not very good at communicating in a positive way. So developer high run from other way, or you can be really building the team enablement, but also build that partnership, friendship. That to measure, you can have developers come to overwhelm your AppSec SMEs. Hey, how did I do this? And that's a measurement that things are working. Um, the other thing is, I don't want to talk too much about security champions program. There's a lot of right way to do it, right wrong way to do it. I think combined with the great thing that Daniel, you guys doing, like gamification is great. One thing I will add to that is to really get developed to care, right? You remember, you want to get back to restore sense of pride. By that, they want to build quality software, right? So security should be part of quality, not some other new thing. But more importantly, the empowerment is important. So once you get the training, this is going to be challenging some of the legacy processes. Is that what if? So what if you have tools and processes that can do audit trails? What if you can give them a ability to triage and ignore, give them some, trust once they've enabled, show, demonstrated they understand the issues versus, okay, yeah, great, you got training, but I still don't trust you because, the security team sets the gate. Give them that, right? So that's the part that I think that helps in terms of giving them some incentives. But it's also important that what James said around secure by design, that's nothing better than paving the road. I think the broader theme, what I'm excited about, having a chance to write about myself, is in the world of DevOps, right? Right now, we're talking about platform engineering. We really got to think about how do we partner from a security perspective, partner right the wave of platform engineering, which is all about building reusable patterns. The development portal have all those components that's already pre-hardened. so that's easy for the dev to consume.
Yeah, really
And
solid point there, Jimmy, on the platform stuff. Uh,
just
James,
to
sorry, go
add,
ahead.
no, you're good. To add to that, I think even really what we've been talking about, the reason that like this all-in-one ASPM idea is so important for 2025 is just the distinct categories we've just talked about, where like secure by design modules is more of like an architecture thing. Pipeline blocking and code training is more like a SAST first party code kind of thing. And then like the blocking mechanisms is like SCA vuln stuff. And I think we can get really confused because those are very different scanners, like that are traditionally holistically different vendors that you're going to for those operations. And so I think that's the importance from like a CISO security view of being able to like put it together and not have to treat these things as though they're like wildly different focus areas. And instead think like, how do we use secure libraries? That's part of the design decision, that's part of the first party code, is like how do we implement those libraries? Like these things can't be treated as like these totally unrelated scanning functionalities because it's all the same like code in the repo that's putting it all together.
Yeah.
But plus one on that, right? I keep saying that it's not the tool, but it's how do you marry them, right? You can best scanning technology, most accurate, no false positive about libraries, right? But it's no good when you don't look at it from a pipeline perspective. You can bypass the configurations. Oh, branch protection not turned on, right? So then you just bypass your gate. So that's why it's important to look at both.
Seems like we have about, what is it, like 7-ish minutes left. I want to talk a little bit more about AppSec in 2025. Um, Generally speaking, this could be a very loaded question, but curious on, the panel's thoughts around their hot takes, what's coming in 2025 in the world of AppSec, and what's here in the future for us. So,
I'll take a swing at it.
sure.
So this is not going to sound. I think at this point, this is probably maybe more of a default position from a CISO perspective, but I really do truly believe it. I guess I would want to communicate to the audience that I'm not just saying this because it's something that I guess is kind of out there in the ether nowadays. But being good at the basics, in my opinion, is way better than being, skating out on some cool new branch, that is super cool and might protect you from that one. So again, I just have to say, I'm always telling you, like, brilliant at the basics, right? We just said it earlier. So for 2025, we still think we still think SaaS testing is an extremely effective and needed control. To James's point, there's certain things that are only going to come out in those detections. We also think that prioritization of those issues is absolutely the most important thing we could do, because you're right, it's just noise, it's just information, it's just data points. Prioritizing that, not only from an exposure and fixability and maturity of exploit kind of perspective, I think those are pretty common, priority gates or priority determiners, but also understanding our organization, our particular risks and risk appetites. So again, just honing that's really a basic. Let's be honest, SaaS testing's been around forever. I don't know, but we still need to get better at it. We need to hone that priority, work on the things that are the most pertinent. And we already talked about it, investing more in developer security, enablement. Again, we think additional training, additional enablement, combining that is something we need to continue to invest in. We shouldn't be sort of comfortable where we're at. We're actively, despite the risk, and again, every organization has to do its own risk assessment. We want to see more. We want more code to be written by AI, at least in the first draft, or whatever you want to call it, right? I'm using, English words, so James, forgive me if there's a better developer term for that.
No, that's
But
fine.
we want to embrace it. We don't want to hide from it. We'd rather embrace it, and hopefully it will have, excellent, impacts on maybe helping us to determine those shared libraries, like you said, and the things that we can do. So we have all those things on our list. We're doing more testing than ever. We're talking a lot about the code. We're doing more and more after the fact testing. So really, but again, these are all basics. Nothing is new. It's just combining all this. And I will say this, we are trying actively in 2025 to combine. We've had these things happening. We have all this security stack that's protecting the end result, right? The end result of our code are these consumer systems that we're using to drive revenue for our company. And we have traditionally spent a lot more time and money on securing the production and the result of all of this, right? Obviously, with Shift Left, we've been trying to add more security to how it's created. In our case, and probably in a lot, those things still operate sometimes in a silo. We are trying to make more connectivity. So for instance, we are trying to add attack surface management into code as a way, again, to additionally prioritize. It's like, hey, this code base has got these vulnerabilities in it. And guess what? It is part of our active attack surface. So again, it may not be the highest on the CVSS scale, but for Intermex, it's part of our active attack surface. So we need a way to ratchet that up from a priority perspective, because regardless of how theoretical real it is, it's actually real. It's actually reachable. It's actually part of our production code base. So again, that's what we're doing in 2025, continuing what we do, but continuing to hone those priorities, continuing to strengthen the awareness training, and the enablement, and really just trying to tie more. We're trying to get to that ASPM vision, right? Trying to combine attack surface management and code testing. And we're really trying to break that silo down as best we can. It's a lofty goal, and it will probably take longer than 1 year in 2025, but that's what we're focused on.
Love it, Daniel. Yeah. Stick to the basics, code security, SaaS is gold, and developer enablement. I love that. Thank you. James, do you want to take it next
Sure.
for us?
Yeah. No, I think half of it is ASPM. Like early in the year, all of my calls were like, what SCA scanner should I get? Which is kind of weird that AppSec like defaulted to SCA scanning like at a mass market level, but it did. But now I'm starting to get a lot more questions about like which ASPM should I pick, or like which all-in-one approach. So I'm starting to finally see that more and more. I was scared that we would be stuck in this like SCA thing the way we were stuck in CSPM forever. And then my big thing though is exactly what Daniel was saying, but I would take it a step forward and say this ASPM plus ADR thing. And ADR is application detection response. It's a push for a new category that's sort of like an evolution of RASP and WAF and that kind of stuff, because it's just instrumented a lot better. And it tells you exactly what you're saying of like, okay, now that I've gotten this visibility into all these code vulnerabilities, I have some ways to prioritize. Different vendors have different amounts of insights into your runtime, attack path, that sort of stuff. But like what functions are executing is the source of truth. Like if that function is executing in runtime, like then you know that you are susceptible to an exploitation if you're not doing encoding on the way in or sanitization or anything. And so I think that runtime protection, like hopefully, I think next year this ASPM plus ADR story comes together. And then looking even beyond that, I think it's just how we treat like CrowdStrike and Windows, where it's like we patch our Windows stuff on time, but if we miss something, CrowdStrike will catch it. And I think we'll treat our code the same way, where it's like, hey, SciCode will scan and catch the vulnerability, but if we don't patch it in time, Oligo, Migo, one of these runtime guys, Raven is going to go. I have to make sure I like go through all of them, or else I get a call later. But that they all detect and block in runtime. So it's the same thing where we're creating patch schedules and relying on the runtime to protect them.
Love that. Yeah. So which ASPM should I pick? Which all-in-one, right? ASPM plus ADR to also, look at runtime as well. So, yeah, year of ASPM and code security sounds like in 2025 here. So, thanks, James.
So good topics. I think the only thing I would add is that both Dan and James talk about the importance of having quality data, right? All the innovation happening is whether it's ASP, ADR, all that is solved. Hopefully, it helps alleviate the developer phone fatigue, so you get them what they need to know more accurately. Another thing I think is I'm just amazed at the evolution and the innovation space, right? The technology space. Now that's why I went to a vendor, but I think it's also important that I think you have and reason why these innovators are gaining traction, because at least customers organizations are looking at those technology, they're looking at innovation, embracing innovation. So one thing that I think that should continue to happen. Don't think you're stuck with legacy processes, right? Oh, why are we still doing 90 scans? Just because you're limited by your legacy technology. So one thing I would share that I think that the we should be living in a world, because again, it's focused on developers, that for the tech, right? I mean, quality is definitely one thing. Ability to have be a platform is another thing, but it has to be, and hopefully the new technology, right? It has to be easy to onboard, right? So one of the fear for these like folks who may be stuck with the legacy, whatever process as a result of legacy tool, because the fear of we invest so much, we have to create invested now how many hours, right? Engineering hours and cost building custom engineering workflows. Oh, the fear of I cannot look at new stuff because I'm stuck. Well, the thing is, the new tech, to me, the trend is that can it happen? Those new players, right? Obviously, Cycle included, has to be easy, right? Easy to switch, easy instant on, that kind of thing. Abstracted from developers, so that in the future, as we innovate, you don't feel the pressure of hey, something new coming that can shave off 50 engineering hours from developers. Let's bring that in without have to worry about takes so much time to switch out. So I think that trend will continue to happen with newer solutions, innovating that with the easy on onboarding, offboarding, and easy to abstract off of developers' workflow.
Love that, Jimmy. Yeah, easy instant on and on, abstract from developers. Amazing. Sounds like we went through the entire panel across these hot takes, the future look into 2025 without even mentioning AI, which is really funny. But great, right? Stick to the basics was kind of a common theme across the board, but love it. So I think we're just out of time. Um, Daniel, Jimmy, James, we'll have to wrap it up, but thank you so much again for your time. And if you'd like to connect with any of these three here, please reach out via LinkedIn. And remember, again, on psycho.com, the State of ASPM report is there for you to download. And if you'd like to talk to anybody about Psychode's complete ASPM, please book a demo with us as well. Thanks everyone for joining us and have a good rest of your day. See you later.
Because
Thank you.